I don't know if you've ever felt cold in a way that made your bones ring, but that's the only word I have for it. Ringing. Like someone hit a tuning fork inside my ribs. And the worst part is, I wasn't outside. I wasn't stranded in a snowstorm or stuck on the side of the highway. I was sitting at my desk, in my own office, watching my breath fog in front of my face. That was the night I realized something about my boss. Something I think he'd been hiding behind his perfect smiles and his "we're family here" speeches. Something that should have scared me more than the fact that the temperature in the room had already dropped below 10 degrees Celsius. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start with this. I'm not the kind of guy who complains about work. I grew up in a family where you're supposed to be grateful for a paycheck, even if that paycheck comes stapled to a migraine. I used to believe that loyalty meant letting things slide, showing up early, leaving late, saying no problem even when there was a problem. My boss, Leonard, loved that about me. He once told me I was predictably useful, which I think he meant as a compliment. He was the kind of man who would smile with only half his mouth, the other half busy calculating what he could take from you without you noticing. He wore expensive glasses, used words like synergy and pipeline, and kept a photo of his golden retriever on his desk so he looked like a human being. But on the night this all started, he didn't look human at all. It was a Thursday in January, the kind where the air outside feels like shattered glass. Everyone had left early because a cold front was rolling in, the worst one in years. The building management sent out alerts asking employees to leave before temperatures dropped too low. Even the security guard had clocked out. I was supposed to leave too. But Leonard stopped by my desk at 6:04 p.m., coat already on, scarf around his neck. "Hey, could you do me a solid?" he said, like asking a favor. "The Cottrell file, the revision we discussed, needs to be finalized tonight." "But the system," I started. "It'll only take you an hour," he cut me off. "Maybe less. You're fast." He smiled in that dry corporate way, like he was blessing me with opportunity. "Lock up when you're done." He left before I could answer. The elevator doors closed. The building fell silent. I remember telling myself, it's fine. I'll just finish the draft, send the file, and head home. I didn't even put my gloves on, just sat down, clicked open the document, and started typing. 3 minutes later, the heaters shut off with a thump that echoed through the vents. At first, I thought it was just the building switching to nighttime mode, but then a faint gust of cold air snaked down from the ceiling vents, crawling across my shoulders. I rubbed my hands together, kept typing. 5 minutes passed. 10. My fingers stiffened. My nails turned pale. Then the door locks engaged with a metallic click. I tested the handle. Locked. I tried the emergency exit. Locked. I tapped my badge against the reader. Red light. That's when the first suspicion flickered across my mind. Small, ridiculous, the kind you shake off immediately. He didn't mean to trap me in here, right? I tried calling him. No answer. Tried again. Straight to voicemail. I texted him. No response. Meanwhile, the temperature kept falling. The cold bit deeper, numbing the skin on my arms. It didn't feel like a heater-off cold. It felt deliberate, heavy, engineered. By 7:30, I couldn't feel my toes. My breath drifted in thin white ribbons. I wrapped my scarf around my face and kept typing because I didn't know what else to do. Because I'd spent years believing that if I worked hard enough, someone in power would appreciate it. At 8:12 p.m., the lights flickered. At 8:14 p.m., the thermostat display on the wall blinked from 13 to 10. At 8:30 p.m., my hands shook so badly I had to type with both thumbs like a kid writing on a phone. I finished the damn file, saved it, sent it, stood up for the first time in 2 hours and nearly toppled over because my knees had stiffened. I stumbled to the window, looked down at the empty parking lot. Snow was drifting sideways. Streetlights buzzed in circles of fog. I kept thinking, he wouldn't do this on purpose. He wouldn't. But then I remembered a detail that made my stomach drop. Weeks earlier, Leonard had mentioned that the building had remote climate control now, fully automated from management devices. He'd said it casually, bragging about how efficient the system was. The cold didn't feel efficient, it felt personal. I finally managed to get out after 10 p.m. Long story, emergency override, freezing metal, bruised fingers, and walked to my car with numb legs, shaking so hard I could barely fit the key in the ignition. I went home, crawled into a boiling shower, stood there until my skin burned and my teeth stopped chattering. The next morning I showed up at work expecting, stupidly, some kind of apology. A misunderstanding, a glitch, something. Instead, Leonard called me into his office, leaned back in his leather chair, steepled his fingers, and said, "About your annual bonus. I've decided to reallocate it. Your commitment hasn't been where it needs to be." I stared at him, thinking he must be joking. But he wasn't. He smiled. "And I swear to God," he said, "you left last night without finishing the file properly. I had to step in. That's not the kind of reliability we need at your level." I felt something crack inside me. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a thin, quiet fracture. He'd done it on purpose. I didn't know the proof yet, but I knew. And that was the moment everything began to shift, even if I didn't recognize it then. Because what Leonard didn't realize, what he couldn't have realized, was that the freezing office wasn't the worst mistake he made. It was the lie he told afterward. And only later did I learn that the cold evening left behind traces, logs, data, things he couldn't erase, but that was still ahead. I wish I could tell you I walked out of Leonard's office that morning with dignity. The truth is, I walked out numb. Not cold numb like the night before. This was different. This was the kind of numbness that forms when your brain can't process the fact, the audacity of how someone twisted reality right in your face. He didn't just steal my bonus. He rewrote the story. He pretended I abandoned the project he forced me to finish in a room cold enough to see my breath. And the worst part? I could already feel the shift in the office, the glances, the small pauses in conversation when I walked by. Leonard's version of events was moving through the workplace like a quiet virus. By noon, 2 people from marketing were already whispering in the break room about how I'd been slipping lately. I stood there, filling my coffee, hearing my reputation rust, inch by inch. That was the irritation, the small, slow-burning kind. But the injustice, that came later. Around 2 p.m., a notification pinged on my phone, an automated email from the building system. Temperature threshold exceeded in Zone 4 during off hours, logged for review. Zone 4, our floor. I froze. The timestamp was from the same night Leonard had asked me to stay. I opened the message, expecting the usual generic codes, but it wasn't generic. It listed exact metrics. Temperature drops, airflow changes, and at the bottom, a line that didn't belong in an automatic alert. Manual override detected. ID. L. Wilcox, Leonard's full name. My first reaction was disbelief, like seeing something you know is true, but your brain won't let you believe because it disrupts the entire world you'd built around it. I reread it, twice, 3 times. My hands trembled, not with fear this time, but with anger, sharp and clean. He hadn't left the heater off. He had turned it down, manually, from his phone or from his office system before walking out in his scarf and coat. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. The irritation from earlier fused into something heavier, something with teeth. But that wasn't the end. 3 minutes later, another alert came in, a system-generated reminder I'd never seen before. Door access logs available for previous cycle. Review here. My thumb hovered over the link, and then clicked. A list opened. Timestamps of every badge swipe the previous night. The log of the main door, the emergency exit, even the manual lock override. I scrolled down. My badge, 1803. Entry, 1804. Workstation active, 1807. Heat reduction triggered, 1811. Door lock engaged, 1812. Manual override canceled, 1920. Heating disabled, remote, 1921. Door lock, reinforced, remote. And then the line that made my pulse throb in my neck. 1922. Override request denied. Insufficient privileges. I wasn't just stuck inside a freezing office. I wasn't locked in accidentally. I was denied exit, actively. Like someone had decided that keeping me inside was preferable to letting me walk out before the file was done. A cold realization settled in my stomach. This wasn't a glitch. It was intentional, deliberate, calculated. And whoever had set all this up had never expected me to see these logs, because employees weren't supposed to receive them. The system wasn't meant to send notifications to anyone except facilities managers. So why did I get them? I didn't have much time to wonder. At 3:02 p.m., Leonard appeared behind my desk, his shadow stretching over my screen. "Status update?" he asked, tone crisp like nothing had happened. I closed the logs, minimized everything. "On what?" He smiled, tapping my desk with 2 fingers. "On you getting your head back in the game." The patronizing tone was the final straw. "I never left the game," I said. "You just keep moving the goalposts." He paused. Not long enough to think. Just long enough to calculate. "You know," he said, lowering his voice, "a lot of people in this office look up to you. It'd be a shame if that changed." A threat disguised as guidance. I felt that fracture widen inside my chest. "Are you implying something?" "I'm advising you to stay professional. Don't create drama where there isn't any." He straightened his tie. "And don't bring up last night. It's unbecoming." That word, unbecoming, hit me like an insult lobbed across a dinner table in front of guests. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't pretend to care. He just defined the narrative. I was being dramatic. I was overreacting, and any attempt to defend myself would be labeled unprofessional. He walked away with the confidence of someone who'd done this before, someone who'd gotten away with it. But that confidence wasn't going to last, because as soon as he disappeared down the hall, someone else appeared near my desk, Samuel. Quiet, older guy from facilities, the one nobody notices unless the lights go out or the vents start rattling. He had a folder in his hand and a look I hadn't seen on anyone's face all day. Concern. "You got the alerts?" he asked in a hush. "Yeah," I said. Samuel glanced around, then stepped closer. "They weren't supposed to go to you." "I figured." He held out the folder, a thin paper trail. Printouts, screenshots, system logs. "Thought you should have these for whatever you decide to do." "Why me?" I whispered. He inhaled, eyes on the floor. "Because someone needs to put a stop to him. And I'm old enough that if he fires me, I'll sleep better anyway." I swallowed hard. "Samuel, what exactly happened last night?" He met my eyes. "Exactly what you think happened." And that was the moment. The shift. Something inside me settled. Not anger, not fear, just clarity. I didn't know it yet, but that simple decision, taking the folder from his hands, would cost Leonard more than a bonus could ever buy. And it was only the beginning. I didn't go home that night, not really. My body did. I showered, warmed my hands under steaming water, microwaved something I didn't taste, but my mind stayed in the office, replaying line after line in those logs Samuel had handed me. Every timestamp, every override, every denial. The more I read them, the clearer the pattern became. Leonard wasn't improvising. He wasn't having a bad day. This was a system, a method he'd used before, probably on people who never connected the dots, never got the notifications, never had someone like Samuel quietly watching the building's backbone. I didn't sleep, not because of fear, because of focus. I kept seeing that moment in his office, him leaning back, smirking, talking about my commitment, like he hadn't turned my workplace into a freezer and locked me inside like a piece of equipment. By morning, something inside me had hardened into a decision. Not revenge, not yet. Action. When I walked into the building the next day, Samuel was already waiting by the elevator, holding a coffee with 2 cups stacked. A quiet invitation. "You ready?" he asked. No small talk. "As ready as I'll ever be." We rode down to the operations floor, a space most employees didn't know existed. It was a long, low-ceilinged room full of humming servers, blinking diagnostics, climate control panels with tiny red and green LEDs. Samuel walked like he belonged there, like he'd built every wire. He led me to a workstation with 3 screens. "Sit," he said. I did. He typed a password so fast I couldn't have read it even if I tried. Panels opened. Logs spread across the monitors like sheets of ice. "This is the raw data," he said, "not the sanitized weekly reports management gets." He clicked on a tab labeled Access Manual Overrides. There it was again. L. Wilcox. Temp override, lock sequence, remote denial. But that wasn't what made my stomach tighten. A second window opened automatically on the left, a log titled History, 6 months. And I saw his name, again, and again, and again. I leaned forward. "Samuel, what is all this?" He exhaled slowly. "Patterns. You're not the first one he's left in a freezing or overheated office after hours. You're just the first one who got the logs." My chest tightened. "Why?" "Because the system is old. It's glitchy. I patched it last month. Something about the update broke the filter." He tapped the folder I'd brought. "You got what others didn't." 6 months. 6 documented nights. 6 overrides tied to Leonard's ID. Some of them looked exactly like what had happened to me. Some included spike heating instead. Rooms hitting 32, 35 degrees before shutting down. All of them were followed by the same thing. Employee complaint. Dismissed. Employee performance. Downgraded. Employee status. Resigned within 90 days. A trail of pressure. Of manufactured failure. Suddenly, the cold I'd felt wasn't physical anymore. It was moral. Leonard wasn't just abusive. He was strategic about it. He used the building like a weapon. I felt something shift behind me, like the air itself pushed back and turned. Leonard was standing behind the glass-walled server room, talking to 2 managers, laughing, one hand in his pocket, the other gesturing like everything in the world bent toward him. He didn't see me, but watching him talk, relaxed and confident, made my jaw clench. "Does anyone else know about this?" I asked. "Only me," Samuel said. "And now you." "And if I do something with this, what happens to you?" He shrugged. "Son, I'm retiring in 3 months. Only reason I'm still here is because I want someone to see what he's been doing. Someone who won't just walk away." I nodded, throat tight. "Thank you." Samuel rested a hand on the desk. "Just promise me you'll tell the truth. Don't embellish. You don't need to. The facts are enough." And he was right. The facts were nuclear. I spent the next 2 hours gathering everything I could. Logs, timestamps, access codes, climate sequences, swipe errors, remote commands. It felt less like collecting evidence and more like assembling a story the building itself had been trying to tell quietly, beneath the hum of fluorescent lights. At noon, Leonard summoned me. He didn't knock. He didn't ask. He simply leaned into my doorway and said, "Conference room. Now." His voice carried that edge he used when he was performing for an audience. The room was half filled. HR, a woman from legal, and Marcus, one of the directors. Leonard sat across from me with the posture of a man certain he was winning. "We've received internal concerns about your behavior," he began smoothly. "Irregular hours, unapproved access, incomplete deliverables. Before this becomes formal, I wanted to give you a chance to explain." I stared at him. "Explain what exactly?" Leonard crossed his legs. "Your absence of commitment." The irony nearly made me laugh, but I didn't. I opened the folder, calm, steady, cold in a way even he couldn't engineer. "I think," I said, sliding the printed logs across the table, "we should talk about your commitment." His expression didn't break at first. Leonard was good. He'd practiced the politician's smile for years. But when he saw the highlighted lines, the manual overrides, the ID numbers, the timestamps, something in his jaw twitched. not panic. Calculation failing. "What is this supposed to prove?" he asked too quickly. HR leaned forward. "Leonard, these are system logs." "No," he corrected sharply. "These are falsified. They have to be. He's desperate. He's making up." Marcus raised a hand, silencing him. "Leonard," he said slowly, "these entries come from the building's root server. There's no way he generated this." Leonard opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked human, mortal. "This is a misunderstanding," he said, voice tightening. "He's upset about his bonus, and now he's—" "Your ID is on every override," HR said quietly. 6 incidents. Half a year. Leonard's voice cracked. "He's framing—" "Enough!" Marcus's voice cut through the room like metal on concrete. "This goes to corporate." Leonard turned to me then, not with anger, with something closer to fear dressed as hatred. "You don't understand what you've done," he whispered. I held his stare. "No, I finally understand exactly what you've done." The room dissolved into motion after that. HR printing forms, legal sending data requests, Marcus making a phone call with a tone I'd never heard from him. Leonard tried to protest, to deny, to twist the narrative, but his words kept collapsing under the weight of the logs. By the time the meeting ended, everything in the office felt charged, like static before a storm. I stepped into the hallway, breath shaking not from fear, but from something sharper, cleaner. For months, Leonard had misused the systems he controlled. Now those systems were speaking for themselves, and he had no idea what was waiting for him in the next 24 hours. The thing about collapses is that they don't look cinematic. They don't explode. They fold. Quietly. Precisely. One line at a time. Leonard's collapse began the next morning at 9:14 a.m. I was at my desk pretending to work. Or maybe I actually was working. It's strange how peaceful focus becomes when fear leaves your body. When the glass doors near reception opened and 2 corporate investigators walked in. Not security guards, not police. Just 2 people in dark coats who looked like they were here to fix a leak in the roof. They greeted reception, then HR, then Marcus, and then they disappeared into the small conference room with the door that never fully shuts, unless you pull it twice. They pulled it twice. 10 minutes later, Leonard was called in. He walked past my desk with that tense, clipped stride of someone preparing for a performance he hadn't rehearsed. His tie was knotted too tightly. His collar had a wrinkle that shouldn't be there. He didn't look at me, but he didn't need to. Every movement of his body said one thing. He knew. The door shut behind him. The hallway went still. You'd be amazed how loudly silence can ring in an office. Phones muted themselves. Chairs didn't squeak. Even the printer stalled on a half-done sheet like it didn't dare make noise. I didn't move. No one did. We all heard the murmur of voices from behind the glass. Low, firm, overlapping. Every now and then Leonard's voice spiked, then thinned, then broke into fragments. You could hear paper sliding, a chair scraping, the controlled tone of someone reading from a document he wished he'd never seen. At 10:02 a.m. the door opened. Leonard stepped out, or rather, he was guided out. One investigator walked ahead of him, the other behind, not touching him, not restraining him, but close enough that the message was unmistakable. Leonard clutched a folder to his chest like a life raft he'd been handed too late. His eyes met mine for a fraction of a second. There was no hatred, no rage, just recognition and defeat. He turned away and they escorted him out through the side exit usually reserved for deliveries. No speech, no drama, no chance for him to rewrite the narrative one more time. He was gone by the time the printer resumed its stalled page. The breath the office had been holding finally released. Chairs shifted. Keyboards clicked again. Someone coughed. By noon, the email arrived. Effective immediately, Leonard Wilcox is no longer employed by the company. Interim oversight will be managed by the compliance team until a replacement is appointed. Dry, corporate, perfect. A second email arrived 5 minutes later, addressed only to me, from Marcus. Please come to my office. I walked in expecting tension, maybe suspicion, maybe more questions. Instead, Marcus stood up, shook my hand, and said, "Thank you for bringing the logs forward." I didn't correct him. I didn't say it was Samuel who'd handed them to me. Samuel didn't want credit. He wanted truth. That was enough. Marcus sat down and folded his hands. Your bonus is reinstated in full, retroactive. Additionally, there's an internal opening in the West office. Senior position, better team, better environment, fewer politics. I've already recommended you. I blinked because it felt surreal hearing those words in the same room where I'd once been afraid to disagree with Leonard about printer ink. You don't owe the company loyalty, Marcus said quietly, but we'd like to earn it back. I nodded. It was the only answer that felt honest. There were signatures to add, forms to acknowledge, a confidentiality clause to respect. All standard, all clean, nothing hidden. When I got back to my desk, Samuel was waiting in the corner. He didn't smile, but his eyes crinkled the way older men smile without moving their mouths. "It's done?" he asked. "It's done," I said. He patted my shoulder once. "Good. You deserve better than freezing in the dark." So did everyone else he did that to. He nodded, slow and heavy. "You did something about it. Most don't." And just like that, he walked away, leaving me with the quiet hum of a workspace that suddenly felt different, lighter, like the tension in the walls had finally let go. Over the next 2 weeks, things moved fast. My transfer was approved. My bonus hit my account. HR scheduled interviews for Leonard's replacement. People who had avoided eye contact for months now greeted me with this cautious, respectful nod, the kind you give someone who survived something you didn't notice happening. On my last day in the old building, I packed my things into a single box. I didn't have much. A plant that had somehow survived the cold. A mug Samuel had fixed with industrial glue. A stack of neatly labeled project folders. I walked out at 5:03 p.m., early for once, and no part of me felt the need to look back. The West office was different from the moment I stepped in. Bright. Simple. Warm. Literally warm, like the heating worked because it was supposed to, not because someone allowed it. People talked in normal tones. Managers acted like managers, not minor gods. My second week there, after finishing a long meeting, I walked outside for fresh air. The cold hit me in the face, sharp but clean, not the hollow cold that crawls under your skin. I stood there on the sidewalk, watching the breath leave my chest in small white clouds. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel trapped. I didn't feel watched. I didn't feel small. I felt calm. That's the thing about justice. It doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just settles. A balance restored, a weight lifted, a quiet earned. And as I walked back inside, I realized something simple. That night in the freezing office wasn't the worst night of my life. It was the last night I ever let someone treat me like I didn't matter. The locks changed, the logs spoke, the truth held, and life went on, cleaner, warmer, stronger. No loose ends, no questions left hanging. Just a door closing behind someone who deserved it, and another door opening in front of someone who finally did too.